Good morning, Prof. Maylin, media friends, faculty, students, and gentlemen. Welcome to the InCube's first anniversary event. My name is Sejal, a final year student in the Wee Kim Wee School of Communication and Information, and it is my pleasure to be your MC this morning. InCube was started midway through the pandemic in 2021, and we are here today to celebrate their anniversary and their meaningful work over the year, especially through such a challenging period for everyone. As you know, their work revolves around the digital life and the increasing relevance it has to us. I'm particularly excited to hear about the interactive map later this morning, as I really feel that it could pave the way for research methods in marketing firms. To kick off this event, I would like to invite Prof. May to give her welcome speech. Prof. May, please.
Good morning to all, and thank you for joining us for InCube's first anniversary webinar, Digital Life During a Pandemic. 2 years into COVID-19, the pandemic has made the internet more important than ever. As restrictions on social gatherings were put in place, and as work and school had to shift online for some time, and as even cinemas closed and in-person dining was suspended, well, the internet became our everyday life to be entertained, to connect, to educate, and to do business for many of us. So while the internet offers so many practical tools to facilitate life, it's also a space where so many dangers lurk. From fake news to online scams to identity theft, we're recognizing more friends and colleagues and loved ones who have fallen prey to the negative experiences online. The global community has recognized that the internet can be a very powerful tool to do good in our society. But on the other hand, it can be very destructive, as we have observed the many cases of doxing, calling out, and even cyberbullying. So this is why here at the Wee Kim Wee School, the Center for Information Integrity and the Internet, or InCube for short, is examining internet use and its consequences. We established InCube in January 2021, exactly 1 year ago, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, as we recognize the need for a center devoted to internet studies in Singapore. Singapore is a global hub that's known for its efficient internet infrastructure, especially at a time when the internet use has been accelerating. For instance, video streaming sites saw traffic numbers previously unheard of, and video conferencing tools like Zoom became amongst the most downloaded apps in the past 2 years. Clearly, conducting much deeper internet studies is very timely and crucial, and especially in this era that's marked by an increase in malicious web practices such as fake news. So I applaud the InCube for responding to this need and congratulate the entire team for a very productive first year. InCube has exceeded expectations on so many fronts. It not only published studies that examine the links between internet use and personal well-being, it's also looked at the phenomena of fake news on social media. It's participated in public discourse by making the information available from academia to the public through various news commentaries and interviews. InCube has done well in making important academic findings to and scholarly insights to be a lot more accessible to the public as well. And many faculty from the Wee Kim Wee School, as well as NTU, have been part of the many efforts that's led by InCube. And I'm proud to be part of this active and dynamic young team. And in case you missed the many InCube monthly webinars on the various topics of interest, all these are available for viewing on the Wee Kim Wee School's YouTube channel. So today's anniversary webinar is the highlight of InCube's year-long efforts, and I look forward to hearing about the results of its new panel study focusing on digital life of Singaporeans during the pandemic. We are all very excited about what's in store for InCube as it enters its second year as a research center, and I congratulate the entire team. Happy first anniversary.
Thank you, Prof. May. I'd now like to invite Prof. Edmund to talk more about InCube and its methodology. Prof. Edmund, please.
Thank you, Sejal and Professor Lewin, for the very kind words and introduction about our center. My name is Dr. Edmund Lee, and I'm one of the assistant directors here at InCube. And today I'll be sharing with us how more about our research teams and methods that we use. So what type of research do we do at the center? I would say that our center broadly focuses on three broad themes. Number one, we are really passionate about research in the online media space and information integrity. So some of the questions that we really want to ask for this team is, what type of information are Singaporeans searching online? How do they actually use the internet? What is the impact of their information searches on their actual offline behavior? In the context of information integrity, we study why fake news proliferate in social media platforms. And also we seek to examine why some people are more susceptible to fake news as compared to other people. And last but not least, we also want to develop communication strategies to mitigate some of this impact of fake news on society. Next, our center also focuses on the impact of the internet on our well-being. With the many ongoing restrictions, in-person restrictions, and due to the COVID-19 and its variants, a lot of our activities have now gone online. So for instance, we spend more time on the internet for work, for education, and even for entertainment. But really the question is, what is the impact of prolonged exposure to internet on our well-being? Do they really foster a sense of community, or do they cause us to be more depressed and socially isolated? These are some of the broad questions that we want to answer here at the center. And third, as a center, we keep our fingers on the pulse of key emerging trends in the area of emerging information technologies. We are interested in how people react to new technologies such as virtual reality, augmented reality, metaverse, blockchain, as well as Web 3.0. Also, as a center, we are concerned about the ethical and the legal implications of the use of such technologies in our daily lives. So today, I'm really very proud to say that we have shared some of these key findings in our research with the academic community through academic publishing as well as conferences. And just to highlight a few that we have, what we have done. So we've done research in the use of live streaming and its potential effects on our well-being. Also, we have examined how Facebook may be associated with envy and depression, as well as how can we take advantage of social media platforms to understand public health concerns. So beyond generating academic knowledge and insights, what we are really passionate about is how can we translate these findings for the everyday Singaporeans. So we have contributed a lot of our insights in commentaries, engaged the media, and some of our research has been covered by the local press as well. Beyond that, we also publish fact books about Singaporeans' reactions to COVID-19, their reactions to the new media and the internet. And today you'll be hearing more about how Singaporeans consume the internet and digital technologies in the pandemic. Beyond that, we also conduct regular webinars. So please check out some of our past recordings where we talk about a lot of different issues from fake news and AIs and chatbots. So how do we answer and explore all these big questions? We use a variety of techniques. So predominantly, we use the quantitative and qualitative social science methods, such as surveys, focus groups, and in-depth interviews. But beyond that, we recognize that as information spreads on the internet and on social media platforms, we also take advantage of big data analytics and online data mining to understand some of these key information trends in the online space. And today, I'm also really very happy to be part of a team that's going to share more with you on our survey work on tracking Singaporeans' internet use over time. You'll be hearing more about that in a short while. With that, I hand the time back to Sejal. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Edmund. Now we'll move on to Prof. Edson, who will be sharing with us his findings from the 3-Wave survey. Prof. Edson, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sejal. As what Edmund said, here at InCube, we study various aspects of internet and information behavior in Singapore through a variety of methods. And one of these is through our panel surveys. So today, as mentioned, I'm very excited to share with you some findings from our 3-Wave panel survey that document our panel's digital life during a pandemic. Starting in 2020, we have been following a group of Singapore residents aged 21 and above through an online survey conducted every 6 months. Our goal is to monitor and understand internet use in Singapore over time. By tracking the same group of people over time, we can also examine changes in online behavior and explore what factors may explain such changes, if any. Of course, this presents logistical challenges. We are very grateful to the 427 participants who participated in all of our 3 surveys so far, as their inputs have helped us in having a more nuanced understanding of how various aspects of internet use in Singapore may be changing. This means that our panel may not be representative of the Singapore population, but our findings offer a deeper analysis of the digital life of a particular group of adult residents in Singapore during this ongoing pandemic. So our Wave 1, our first survey, was conducted in December 2020, and this included 1,606 participants. This was around the time when Singapore relaxed its alert level to phase 3 to allow gatherings of up to 8 people in public. That seems like a long time ago. This was also around the time when the first shipment of Pfizer vaccines arrived in Singapore. Wave 2 was done in July 2021 and involved 689 of the original participants. This was around the time when the alert level was raised to phase 2, following new clusters traced to a KTV bar and the fishery port. Finally, Wave 3 was done in December 2021, and 427 of the original respondents from the 2 earlier waves completed the survey. This was around the time when the threat from the Omicron variant was looming, but also a time when many residents took advantage of Singapore's vaccinated travel lane arrangements with several countries for holiday travels. Based on our respondents who took part across all 3 waves, our final sample is 46.8% female and has an average age of about 43 years. Most were married, 61.2%, and have at least a bachelor's degree, that's 66.7%. Our findings are summarized in our Digital Life During a Pandemic working paper, where our InCube student members wrote some of the chapters. You're seeing them on the screen. Jingwei, Sophia, Lanchard, Guanteng, and Shruti, they all contributed chapters in this report, where we examine internet use in general, as well as news consumption, fake news, social media, entertainment, online shopping, video conferencing, as well as emerging technologies. So let's start talking about the internet. Time spent on the internet in general was stable across the 3 time points. On average, members of our panel spend around 6 hours a day on the internet. Also, overall, our participants reported high levels of satisfaction with the internet, especially when it comes to speed and reliability. Most of them also connect to the internet using home Wi-Fi or mobile data, and primarily through their smartphones. In terms of devices used to connect to the internet, we noticed an increase from Wave 1 to Wave 3 in the percentage of our panel members who were using smart watches to connect to the internet. The top 4 reasons for using the internet are to keep track of the news, to use search engines for work or school, and for entertainment. The percentage of those who say they use the internet for news often or very often actually increased over time from December 2020 to December 2021. So let's talk about news consumption. News consumption generally increased across the 3 time points during the pandemic so far, especially at Wave 2, and this might be due to the spike in the number of cases around that period. Local mainstream news media, including television and news websites, are the channels our panel members frequently visited and spent the most time on. The red line that you're seeing on the screen is for local news websites, while the yellow line is for TV news. Here we asked how often they access the news from a variety of different news sources. What is notable is that the consumption of news via WhatsApp was declining. That's the trend that we are seeing. Before the pandemic, In studies and surveys that we have conducted at the Week in We School of Communication and Information, we found that Facebook and WhatsApp were actually the most frequently used news sources in Singapore. That seems to have changed during the pandemic. As you can see on the screen, news websites and television news outperformed Facebook as source of news across the 3 time points. Local radio is also an important source of news for at least 1/3 of our panel members who get their news often or very often from listening to local radio. So that's news. That is real news. So what about fake news? Let's talk about fake news now. The pandemic has also demonstrated the importance of fake news as a problem, how it remains to be an important concern around the world and also in Singapore. Indeed, the majority of our panel members agreed or strongly agreed that there is so much fake news online. Many also remember seeing examples of fake news claims that we listed in our questionnaire. More than half of our panel members are confident about their ability to sort real news from fake news. For example, in December 2021, some 56.5% of our panel members agreed or strongly agreed that they know how to verify whether what is shared on social media is correct. 61.6% also agreed or strongly agreed that they know how to use different sources of information to verify information that they see on social media. An overwhelming majority of participants claim to have received fake news articles from family or friends at least once, while some also admitted to sharing fake news articles to others, both unknowingly or knowingly. 19%, as you're seeing on the screen, said they often or very often receive fake news from family members, while 15% said they often or very often unknowingly share fake news with others. However, there are fact-checking sites available in Singapore and overseas that we can access from here. But despite the availability of these fact-checking sites, only 23% of our panel members said they use fact-checking sites often or very often. Fake news and other types of falsehoods, such as scams, are of course very common on social media spaces. So now let's look at social media use. Our panel members spend around 2 hours on average on social media platforms and also around 2 hours on average on messaging apps. Time spent on these spaces, social media and messaging apps, have been stable across time. Facebook and WhatsApp remained popular during the pandemic, but newer platforms are making significant gains in the last 2 years in terms of number of users. Twitter use, for example, seems to be growing from only 19.4% of our panel members reporting they used Twitter in December 2020. This increased to 27.9% a year later. The number of those using the video sharing app TikTok among our panel members also increased from 13.6% in December 2020 to 25.3% in December 2021. Similarly, Telegram is also making significant gains from only 34% of our panel members saying they use it in December 2020 to 42.6% in December 2021. So good news across these fronts for some of the newer social media platforms, but this may also be a source of concern as we should be seeing and we should be examining what kinds of messages are also being exchanged within these spaces. And as many of us are staying home most of the time, we may be spending more time on newer social media platforms, not only to connect with others, but also simply to be entertained. So let's talk about entertainment use. When it comes to entertainment use, video streaming sites have become significant sources during the pandemic, significant sources of entertainment. Our panel members spend about 2.41 hours a day on video streaming sites. That's slightly higher than time spent on local TV and much higher than time spent on cable TV. We've probably heard of friends who've canceled their cable TV subscription to subscribe to a video streaming site or sites instead. Time spent on video streaming increased across the 3 time points as the majority of our panel members, around 70%, as of December 2021, remained hesitant to frequent cinemas. Many of us, it seems, not just me, still choose to watch movies at home, where some of us may also be doing our online shopping. So let's talk about online shopping and the percentage of our participants who buy first. Let's talk about groceries, who buy their groceries online often or very often, increased from 24.8% in December 2020 to 27.8% in July 2021. And this is most likely due to the increasing number of COVID-19 cases during that period that discouraged many people from going out. This figure decreased again to 23.6% in December 2021, possibly due to the relaxing of safety measures around that time. But what we're seeing here is throughout the 3 time points that we've done our surveys, the majority of our panel members still bought their groceries from physical stores. When it comes to online shopping in general, not just groceries, but also buying your clothes and then other things, majority of our panel members still bought, majority of our panel members are still going to physical stores. About 1/3 of our panel members do their shopping online often or very often. Interestingly, we found a decrease in the percentage of our panel members who order food online for delivery, from 31.4% who said they do so frequently or very frequently in December 2020 to only 23.8% in December 2021. The majority of our panel members pay their transactions via credit or debit card, although we also see a slight increase in the percentage of those who pay using mobile wallets. In December 2021, 11% of our panel members said they pay for their transactions using mobile wallets. This is up from only 7.5% in December 2020. Since we are on Zoom today and we're glad that you're joining us via Zoom, let's talk about video conferencing. Video conferencing has become one of the major changes in digital life during this pandemic, as many of us shifted to either working from home or taking online classes, or in my case, teaching online classes. On average, our panel members spend about 2 hours per day on video conferencing, but we see that this also depends on age. Younger adults, those aged 21 to 30, reported spending on average more than 3 hours on Zoom and video conferencing tools in July 2021, the highest among the age groups. Those aged 31 to 40 use it for about 3 hours as well, and were the heaviest users in December 2020 and also in December 2021. Zoom displayed an increase in terms of how heavy users are using it, from 28.8% of our members saying they use it often or very often in December 2020 to almost 40% saying they do so in July 2021. Microsoft Teams also showed a marginal increase. Finally, we also asked our participants about newer devices such as smartwatches, voice-assisted personal devices such as Google Mini and Amazon Echo. We see an increase in the time spent using smartwatches and fitness trackers, as you are seeing on the screen. However, most of our participants do not use virtual reality or AR headsets, and more than 70% do not use voice-assisted personal devices. Although I am very curious, we have a smart room here at the Week in We School actually, where we can ask Google to turn the lights off or turn the lights on. What is on is our new InCube blog that we are officially launching today. Our report about digital life during this pandemic is also available online. Digital life is very much part of our daily lives, especially so in Singapore, considered to be one of the most digitally connected nations in the world. As we rely even more on the internet for many facets of our daily lives, especially as we enter a post-pandemic world, it is important for us to remain mindful of and reflexive about our online behaviors and their consequences, not only to us, but also to society in general. InCube is committed to contribute to this effort as we celebrate our first year as a research center. You can download our full report from our new InCube blog at blogs.ntu.edu.sg/InCube, or you can also scan the QR code on the screen Our blog has an interactive feature, and I'll turn you back over to Sejal for more details.
Now, I would like to pass the time to Tang Hao, a postdoctoral fellow in InCube, Wee Kim Wee School of Communication and Information, who will be demonstrating the interactive map. Tang Hao, the stage is yours.
The interactive map is an extension of our research findings from our working paper to the interactive map on the screen that you see here. All right. So what we are seeing here is that we have actually successfully mapped the 427 responses to 5 regions in Singapore: West, East, North region, Central region, and Northeast. So if you're using a computer right now, please join me in this very simple demonstration. Right. Okay. So as you can see from the screen here, we actually have mapped all these responses across Singapore in 5 regions. So we have actually 3 time periods from December 2020, July 2021, and December 2021. So let me do a simple demonstration. Maybe let us look at internet use. And then I want to find out the number of hours spent on internet across Singapore during this time period, December 2021. So as you can see from this map, the people on the West actually spend more time on the internet compared to other regions in Singapore, right? So likewise, we can look at the use of social media, right? I want to know the number of hours spent on social media. Right, so as you can see in this map again, the people in the North region tend to spend more time on social media compared to the rest of the regions in Singapore, right? So in this map, there are a lot of things for you to explore. Maybe we can look at online shopping, right? Online shopping, we want to know the amount of money spent for each online shopping trip. So we can see that in the Northeast region, they are the high spenders for during this period of time in online shopping. So in other words, there are a lot of fields for you to explore, and there's a lot of interesting findings for you to know. So yep, so I would encourage you to actually play around with this map, and then hopefully you'll find something interesting and useful for you. Yes. Right, back to you, Sejal.
Thank you, Tang Hao. Now, before we wrap up this event, we do have time for a few questions. Thank you for those who sent it in to the Q&A chat box over the Zoom webinar. So let me have a look. Now, the first question we have is, maybe Tang Hao can take this. It is regarding the map. So the map looks interesting. Why did your center decide to come up with this map? What is the purpose?
Okay. Well, the first reason for coming out with this map is to have fun, right? Is to have lots of fun with our research data. In other words, we want to be playful with our own research, right? There's a saying that in the academia, that research are dry and boring, but we want to take away the serious note away from this research. So we want to connect our data with a wide variety of people, students, teachers, working professionals. So we want them to actually experience the joy of discovering new information that are related to their daily lives.
Okay, thank you, Tang Hao. The next question we have is, fake news is an issue that has been around even prior to the pandemic. What changed during COVID-19, and do we see any improvement? Perhaps Prof. Edmund can take this one?
Sure. Thank you, Sejal, for this great question. And I think that you are right that pandemic or fake news is not really a new thing. It has existed even before the pandemic itself. But what really makes this a problem in this current pandemic are a few factors. Number one, we have more social media users today as compared to the times previously in the previous pandemic, such as H1N1 or even the Zika virus. Number two, this is really a rare situation where both the scientists and the lay public are figuring science out themselves in view of everyone. So traditionally, how science is done is that scientists would be together, right, in a laboratory, and they figure things out, they publish results, they make sure that their methods are robust. Once they are confident of their findings, then they share with the public. That is traditionally how science is done, but that is not the way it is for our current COVID-19 pandemic, where scientists are figuring things out themselves, and the public are at the same time trying to make sense of the findings on social media platforms. And I think that really contributes to a lot of the sharing of misinformation. Sometimes even people may not be aware that they are sharing misinformation. And last but not least, I think one interesting thing is that there's a small group of people from the east to the west across all different continents. They want to hijack social media platforms and weaponize it for their own political or agenda, their own agenda. So we see all these different factors that make COVID-19 very different from the previous pandemic, and making the problem of fake news more pronounced.
Thank you for that. Does anyone else have anything to add on to that question?
Yep, I agree with Edmund. I think we're also seeing a change in terms of speed, in terms of how fast misinformation and other types of falsehoods are exchanged online. And I think a big part of that is the proliferation of different social media and online tools to make this kinds of information exchange. Also the reach, I think, because during the pandemic, since we're spending more time on social media, as what we reported earlier, and we're also seeing that there might be a shift in terms of where are people congregating, so to speak, online, from older social media platforms to potentially newer ones. And maybe when it comes to the newer ones, the interventions or the programs we've put in place to, in a way, intervene or address fake news in some of the older spaces may not be working when it comes to the other spaces. For example, Edmund and I have been looking at Telegram groups, for example, where people, some users also exchange concerns, but also exchange inaccurate information about vaccination and about other things about COVID-19. And there's something that we used to see on WhatsApp, for example, but now that people are moving into other social media spaces, it's important for us to also keep track of where they're going and what they're doing in these spaces.
Yeah, that's very true. I think about the Telegram groups and how the misinformation rather has moved from WhatsApp to Telegram. So it's great, I think, to keep track of these different platforms. Another question we have is that it is interesting to see that news websites and TV were used more frequently by the respondents than social media for news. So do you think this is the new normal? Maybe Prof. Edson, you want to take this?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a former journalist, so when I saw these results, I thought it's also very encouraging. But whether this is how it's going to be like from here on, I'm not very sure. I think what we're seeing is something that we've known all along, that during times of crises, during difficult times, people turn to news, and what's encouraging with the results is when they turn to news, they turn to legitimate, real news sources for information. So I think this one is encouraging. As I've said earlier, before the pandemic, in the surveys that we've been doing at the Weeking We School, we've always seen, at least when I started in 2017 doing these surveys, we've always seen Facebook as the most frequently used news source in Singapore. But that changed, and I was also surprised when we found in our December 2020 survey that the most frequently used news source are news websites and also local television. So this is encouraging, but whether this is the new normal, I think that's something that we have to wait and see. I'm not that optimistic, as I've said. I think what we're seeing is that increased interest in news is driven by the current pandemic period, and we're also seeing this in other countries, at least at the peak of the pandemic, in the earlier stages of the pandemic. TV watching, the number of those who watch TV news also peaked in many other media markets. And so I think what we're seeing is really a function of the current situation that we are in. And this might change when the situation normalizes.
Let's hope the situation normalizes.
Yes.
Okay, last question we have time for. The question is, I can totally relate with increased use of video conferencing, but has your center also looked at the effects of video conferencing, like video conferencing fatigue? Maybe Tang Hao can take this, and Prof. Edmund, you can add on after.
Well, sure. Firstly, We have been tracking video conferencing activities since the first wave, and in our first wave, we have actually 80% of our participants actually say that they actually use video conferencing tools. So what we can actually associate video conferencing fatigue with is the feelings of loneliness. So what we have found is video conferencing fatigue is actually positively associated with feelings of loneliness. So the more lonely you are, the highly likely that you will feel the fatigue. So we can actually relate that with the work from home, with the current work from home practice that we observe. So people may feel lonely, and therefore it kind of actually contribute towards their feeling of tiredness or being overwhelmed when they actually use video conferencing fatigue. And I think another more interesting thing about video conferencing fatigue is that it is actually negatively associated with age. So what we have found is that age, the younger you are, the highly likely that you are to experience video conferencing fatigue. And that to us is quite counterintuitive because, as young people, we have stronger bodies. We adapt well to the demands of video conference meetings. And it is very interesting to note why is that so. So that actually warrants more research at our end.
Yeah, thank you, Zhang Hao. And I think it is really interesting that we are asking about video conferencing fatigue. And I hope that you are not fatigued right now, watching this. But yeah, this is really a huge problem because I think with many offices going into this hybrid and work from home scenario, I think it's really important to start to pay attention to our employees, even employers, mental health, and how that relates to our use of video conferencing apps. And I think to add on to what Zhang Hao has already presented earlier, one really key interesting finding from our current research is that actually not everyone suffers from Zoom fatigue equally. I'm sure you could think of people in your own office or in your own school where some are more enthusiastic about Zoom, while some are less enthusiastic about Zoom. So why is this so? I think that, so from our results, what we found is that satisfaction with the internet reliability plays somewhat of a role in explaining this. So those who are really satisfied with their internet access and the speed, they report less Zoom fatigue as compared to those who feels that the internet needs to speed up a little more. So I think that really so we need to pay attention to different factors that may amplify Zoom fatigue in some segments of our population. And I think this is a research that we would continue to work on moving forward.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I completely agree what you mentioned. I love Zhang Hao's insight about how age is negatively associated, because that's so true. I think even younger people and students in school are experiencing Zoom fatigue, but not everyone is, like Prof. Edmund said. So that's a really, really interesting insight. We have a few more questions. So one of them is very interesting research. Do you also monitor reactions and responses with regards to online harassment and feelings of safety as respondents went online? I think this is a great question. Would anyone from the panel like to take it?
Yeah.
Prof. Edson?
Yes. Thanks. Really agree. A very important question. And it's also something that we've been tracking, we're studying in our center. While it's not currently part of our digital life working paper, we are planning to devote a separate report focusing on this. In the surveys that we've been conducting, we're also tracking what we call different aspects of perceptions of the quality and the nature of information and discourse that people experience online. So we also have items tracking, how much people perceive that there's a lot of online hate ongoing, that there, aside from fake news, that there's a lot of a hateful speech that they're being exposed to. So we're also tracking responses to those questions. We've also added in our wave tree, we've asked questions about the frequency of cyberbullying, experiences of being harassed online. And these are important questions, and we hope to also provide insights on these topics in our future webinars. But we have the data, so those of you who are interested, please send us an email or let us know, and we'd love to collaborate with you. We have the data, we're looking at it, and we would love to work with you to pursue this line of research. In our digital life working paper, we have a supplemental chapter looking at online vigilantism during the pandemic. So this is one chapter that I would say addresses to some extent this important topic. But as I've said, we have data. This is something that we track in our panel surveys, and we'd love to continue this conversation.
Thanks, Prof. Edson. We have one more question. So this is in regards to mental health. Is there local research and data on the impact of social media and or digital technologies on people's mental health? And if so, which groups are more susceptible to the potentially detrimental effects of digital technologies on mental health? Would anyone like to take this one? Tang Hao?
Right. So we have actually done some research on the impact of social isolation on mental health. So specifically, we actually look at the different dimensions of well-being, psychological, social, yeah. So and also emotional well-being. So I would say that what we have actually researched on is actually how to actually reduce the impact of the effect of loneliness or social isolation on well-being. So what we have found is actually the use of live streaming technologies. So that's you watch more live streaming, and that actually mitigates the relationship between the feelings of loneliness on your well-being. So as to which specific groups of people are more vulnerable towards the effects of technologies. So I would say that people who are more isolated, they spend more time behind computers instead of hanging out with people, with friends, or with families. Yeah.
Would anyone else like to add on to that, or we can move on to the next question?
Yeah, I think that thanks, Zhang Hao, for this response. And I think really our data really shows that it is important to look at different segments of people and see to what extent are they struggling with mental health issues when it relates to social media. And I think a lot of times intuitively we think that the more time you spend on social media, the more negative effects you feel. Well, that is true to a certain extent, but that's not the whole story. And because a large part of research also shows that it is not just the time spent on media, but how you consume content, right? That really explains your mental well-being. So for instance, if you spend a lot of time just looking at other people's profiles, and then you see that your friends are doing much better than you, then obviously it might trigger some negative attitudes and perception. But if you use the internet and social media platforms in a very positive way, searching for information, checking out credible sources, or even using it to connect with your grandma, grandpa, with everyone, then actually the finding shows that it may not actually negatively impact your well-being. So when we look at it, we need to look at how much time people spend, as well as how they actually use social media. Then that would really explains our well-being levels.
Prof. Edson, would you like to add?
Yes, actually, one study that one of the first studies that we published under the center looked at the link between Facebook cues and the experience of depressive symptoms, and that is based on a 3-wave panel survey that we've done in 2016, 17, and 18, I think. What we found there is that hours spent on Facebook can lead to the experience of depressive symptoms, especially if it triggers feelings of envy. So like what Edmund said, just time spent alone may be not enough to explain the experience of depressive symptoms. But when the time that you spend online on these social media spaces, for example, in that study, time spent on Facebook, if that triggers certain negative feelings, for example, in the study, if it triggers envy, I mean you're comparing yourself to what your friends are posting, what you're seeing others are experiencing based on their social media posts, then that may lead to the experience of depressive symptoms.
I have a quick follow-up question to that. I think so, like from what I can summarize from your responses are that, it's also up to users' discretion of what media they consume. What advice would you have other than that of, choosing what media they like to consume for those who are getting affected by, the increasing consumption of digital media and that is negatively impacting their mental health? Anyone can take
Yeah,
this.
yeah. I'll answer first. Based on that research that I've shared, I think one important thing really is for us to be mindful of what social media use is making us feel. And knowing that, for example, if we compare ourselves with what people are posting on Instagram, right, we should be mindful that most people would only put good things about themselves, right, on Instagram, on social media. And so if we're only comparing our lives with the digital lives of others, or at least the life that they want us to see, then that's really not a fair comparison. So I think being very mindful of our online use is very important. In another news commentary, when we talk about information overload, which can actually impact well-being, we've also recommended that it's important to once in a while engage in social media detox. I mean, if we look at our data, there are some panel members who would say that, oh, they're on social media almost all the times that they're awake, like for 12, 13 hours, they're just log on social media. And if you're being exposed to so many data points in a particular day, that might make you feel tired, but also that might also contribute negatively to your well-being. So taking short breaks, right, from social media might also be very helpful.
Yeah, I completely agree. Good detoxing time would be very, very helpful. We seem to have one more question. Has there been research on the psyche of individuals who engage in harmful online activities?
That is very interesting and also very important, and something that we actually have data on this, because in our Wave 3 survey we included. So now what we're moving into comparing what we call pro-social internet use. There are people who use the internet to anonymously help others, answer people's questions, make donations, especially important during this pandemic, and with disasters happening in neighboring countries. So we're looking at those items. How often do people engage in pro-social activities online? But we've also added questions to measure how often people engage in not so positive activities online, such as using hateful speech, engaging in cyberbullying. These are items that we have, data that we have, but we have not actually looked at the breakdown on who are the people, what kinds of individuals are more likely to engage in these negative, what we would call negative acts on the internet. So very important question. We have the answer, but the answer is not ready yet.
Well, then we will definitely wait for the answer, and I'm sure we would look forward to your second year in InCube and what more research can be found. Well, thank you everyone for your questions. Thank you for sending them in to the Q&A chat box. Before we wrap up this event, I'd like to pass the time back to Prof. Edson for his closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Sejal. I just would like to thank all of you who are joining us on Zoom right now, and everyone who has joined our activities and helped our center in our first year. It's challenging to establish a research center, especially during a pandemic. But thank you to your help. We're very happy. We're very proud to share what we've been able to do in our past year, and we're very excited in the next years to come for InCube. So we hope that you'll continue to join our events, that you will continue to support us. We'd like to thank our senior advisors, Prof. May, who joined us earlier, our dean at the college, Prof. Joseph Yao, our associate dean, Prof. Charles Salmon, all our fellow faculty members, my colleagues at the Week in We School who've been supporting InCube and our activities, all our student members, and also all the journalists who've written about our work and who've asked us for inputs for their stories, and just everyone who's been helping InCube. Thank you very much for all your help and all your support. And we hope to continue working and collaborating and partnering with you in our next few years. I also would like to take this opportunity to invite you to our next event. We already have our next webinar lined up in February, on February 17 to be exact, we are launching our Fake News in Asia webinar series. In this series, what we hope to do is to invite researchers across countries in Asia to share with us their experience, their country's experiences dealing with fake news. And on February 17, we'll start with 4 countries. We've invited researchers based in China, India, Indonesia, and Malaysia to share about their work and their experiences with fake news in these countries. So we hope that you can join us on February 17, 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. on Zoom. We will be uploading the official invite and the Zoom links on the Wikimwe Facebook page very soon. I hope that you can join us. Thank you very much. And back to you, Sejal.
Thank you, Prof. Edson. We have now come to the end of this event. Thank you everyone for spending your morning with us, and we hope you had a really enriching time. Once again, my name is Sejal. It was a pleasure being your MC. Take care and have a great weekend ahead. Bye.